artificial felt. They're very period with the red plastic.
They're fantastic. They go with your hat.
So yeah, there is no need. Yeah, this is a brand new class they asked me to teach, and so and I had other commitments earlier this month, and so it didn't get put together for the last minute. So I got the rough draft of the handout, but I didn't make the cover page. I didn't get that done. I mean, it's scribbled in pencil here as me in an outline, so it sucks. So you're not filming that, are you?
No.
Okay.
No, sorry. Do you, actually, you're not spanning much more space than you're in, right? You've got plenty, this is widescreen, so I've got like the whole section anyway.
Coming over here to look at my.
I was just checking that you weren't running around.
Here, and that is probably it. I shouldn't.
I always debate how level I should get this when I'm filming from an angle anyway. It doesn't.
Have you been to this one before? Okay.
They usually have longer hair.
Yeah.
She just cut it.
Why?
Because it's great.
Oh, okay. Well, it's certainly easier to care for and more lightweight.
And she's donating it, so.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. I tried short hair a few times on me, and I didn't like it.
I really like how short hair looks. I like long hair and short hair. I don't like the in-between.
Oh, okay. All right.
The shortest I ever did was about shoulder length, and I absolutely hated it. And
Yeah, I don't like shoulder length either. I like shorter.
the shorter the
You wanna plug them power in?
Okay. That's for later.
So, yay, and I found I couldn't do a lot of things, so it was styled, I could style it the way it was cut to be styled, and I could braid it or put it up or put it down.
I never do anything with my hair when it's long, so what's the
Well, I don't do it very often, but
You doing this one?
Do I know you?
it offended me that I couldn't.
Disc 2 of 3.
This is my new persona now, right? 1183, so this is my music.
Come on in. Well, welcome. This is Music Pre-1200. We're going to see how much stuff we can cover. We're not going to have time for it all, because that's a huge span of time. And you just start at 1200 and go backwards. Because believe it or not, they say they've got some ancient Egyptian stuff. Like, I don't know how accurate the notation system is, or if they're just making it up based on. I have no idea. I don't know, but I got this cool CD. It says music of the ancient Sumerians, Egyptians, and Greeks. So they said it must be true. It must be. It must
That
be.
would be where you need to start. I mean, the impression I get is that we know very, very little about what music before
Well, here's the
medieval
thing.
period
I think if I
sounded
started here, I was worried I'd never make it to 1200.
like. Yeah.
So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to start at 1200 with, stuff we more know about, and more our interest in the SCA is more European and not this old. So I'm going to start with what you kind of might have thought the class would be, and then we'll see how much of the other stuff I cover. And I know I'm not going to cover some of it because one of my 3 CDs turns out to be blank. So we'll talk about it when we get there, if we get there. All right, what I've got right on now is a group called Lionheart.
Right.
This is from their Paris 1200 CD. And the reason I've got this on is this is a basic chant. It only had one line written, but following the rules of harmonization, they made up the harmonization for it. And you can see there's like, we're doing like a parallel thing going on here. And then a drum, it's just sitting there. And then, so all that was written was the one melody. But following the rules of harmonization, you can add a drone or you can add a parallel line. So they're doing all those different things. So when we see one melody line written, it could have all those other different sounds too, not just the single tune all by itself. And which times they did which, and I don't know, because it's improv. It's so easy, you really don't need to write it down. Let's write down the note a fourth below this note all the way. Why? Why waste your time? Let's write one note that does this and never changes. Why would you bother? Why waste your time writing it down? So they
Waste
did.
the paper and the ink, which were very pricey.
Yeah, so you don't need to write that stuff. So it's something they were doing, but but they mostly did write, but they did write in treatises that was one way of doing it. And there's a pretty well-known treatise from the 13th century called Summa Musica, which spends 24 chapters on regular plain old chant, and then like the 25th chapter is, oh, and by the way, here's how to do polyphonic stuff. Just one chapter on polyphonic stuff, and the rest was all on just, you know, I'm like, hey, I like that chapter, forget the rest of it, but maybe that's just my modern bias or something.
The polyphonic was introduced.
We don't know how far back it goes. We have 9th century treatises also explaining, it's pretty much the same thing, with the parallel fourth, parallel fifth, parallel octave, or adding a drug.
It wasn't true harmony, it was sort of.
Not the way we think of it, no. But Hendrik van der Werf has posited that it could be a millennia-old technique, because if you've ever been somewhere singing a song with someone, possibly at church singing him, and you hear this person not matching pitch. They're some interval off, and they're paralleling the tune. It's like either they can't tell, or their voice is in the wrong range for the tune or something, and they're just paralleling the tune at this wrong place. It's like a natural human thing that some people do, so maybe it goes way, way back, and people just did it and then decided they liked the way it sounded. Because so-and-so never matches us anyway, and you can't do anything about it, so we might as well go with it, right? So, poor Joe. So, who knows how far back that goes?
There's a Russian choir in Chicago where they talk about how different towns would have their own tunings, and different people would be singing in different ways, and they get together and they'd be out of tune,
To each other.
but
just
they would sort of
go
wing it, and sort of these bizarre Slavic harmonies developed kind of by accident.
Right,
All
well,
these strange
and
dissonances that, well, that's the way this guy sings, and that's the way we sing, and
that's another thing to bear in mind. Anything that we have recorded is recorded now, and we all have equal temperament in our ear. And are we doing it? Are we just inadvertently doing stuff in equal temperament, and should it be in some other temperament? Should the intervals be slightly different? They probably should be slightly different, but once your ear is tuned to one temperament, it's really hard to do something else instead. And I don't know what we do, or, you know, and if it's right. But I just toss that out there. Okay, like I said, I'm going to start in Europe, and I think we'll start with the secular music, and then we'll move to the sacred music, and then we'll move to kind of pre-notational stuff, and then it'll get crazy after that. But so I'm going to start, let's see, with the Minnesänger stuff. So let's listen to Unter der Linden by Walter von der Wohlweide. Just like saying that.
that's a great name.
Now, yeah, Walter from the Birdie Woods. Now he's 1170 to 1230, so this tune might be pre-1200 or it might be post. This is a studio for fruit and music, so this is a recording from the 70s, perhaps. I have it on CD, it was remastered, and they didn't put the original date on there, which was really annoying me, because I could tell by looking at the pictures in there, she's wearing one of those mod belts. It's like, oh yeah, this is so mid-early 70s maybe? Anyway, so this might be pre-1200, or it might be slightly post. Actually, I don't like this particular performance of this song, it's just the one we had, but it's fairly common. Interestingly enough, let's see this. I'll show you the music that you aren't getting, how about that? This is from Al Coffrin's book, Medieval Songs and Dances of the 11th to 14th Century Europe, Volume 1. Interestingly enough, his rhythm here matches exactly what they're doing out here. But I think that's because this is one of those early seminal recordings of early music. And sometimes the rhythm done on the first recordings becomes the one that becomes standard, even though the notation isn't that exact on what the rhythm should be. Now, me personally, I would take this song faster, and I'm not sure I would do this rhythm. Because this is Under the Tree, you know, I met my boyfriend, Tanadarai, and ooh, did he kiss me? Oh yes, Tanadarai. So I think, you know, it could be a little bouncier than it is, you know, because it seems like I'm not gonna tell, only the little birdie knows, woohoo! Yeah, so this sounds almost like a lament to me, the way they're doing it, so I'm not kinda crazy about that.
Rhythms probably weren't standard then either, though, right?
No, and I don't necessarily think that each performer would do the rhythm the same either. So it may be, and the notes aren't necessarily the same either. You can improvise, you can add extra notes, and that's something that we tend not to do. We see those notes on the page, but these are the ones you must do. Actually, no, it's an outline, so you can change it. Okay, that's enough of that. In fact, to demonstrate that the rhythm is different, this is from The Art of the Minnesänger, Volume 1 by Ronald Taylor. This is a tune by Wolfram von Essenbach, and he is definitely a little earlier than Walter. And this is actually something that we rarely have, which is, it's a little snippet of one of those epic poems, and mostly we don't have the music with epic poetry. We have the short love songs or the debate poems or laments, but we don't have whatever music they were doing for Song of Roland or the Nibelungenlied or whatever big long stories they were telling. This is supposedly a snippet of music that goes with one of those big long things. But the guy in the book wrote it in quadruple measure and in triple measure, because we don't know which rhythm is right. And one of the problems with earlier sources of getting music is that they tend to write it in a rhythm, and then because it's written that way, you assume that you must do it that way, when they're actually, it's just conjectural. I have a version of Kalenda Maya. I have 5 different, at least, I have 5 different versions of the rhythm, all in 3/4. Every one of them is different. And that's just in 3/4, and who says it's in 3/4? But, so let's hear this one in quadruple measure and in triple measure, just to see how it sounds different. And then it might not be either of those rhythms either. We could go lots of places with it. So, this translates, my grief is like a river flowing, so it's all sad. Ja, mer ist mir entsprungen, ach, mein Leid ist fest, oh, Eklag hat betrunken, min seltes Herz ruft ihren Linnennästen. Oh, Muttrost Bräude muss ich decken, Susen Trauben weinen will ich am diesen werden recken. One possible rhythm. Let's try his triple rhythm. Ja, mer ist mir entsprungen, ach, mein Leid ist böse, oh, Eklag hat betrunken, min sendes Herz ruft ihren Linnennästen. Oh, Muttrost Bräude muss ich decken, Susen traurig weinen, will ich diese Wellen recken. Also nice. Or it could be neither of those. It could be like a free rhythm. Ja, mer ist mir entsprungen, ach, mein Leid ist fest, oh, Eklag hat betrunken, min sendes Herz ruft ihr Linnennästen. Oh, Trost Freude muss ich decken, Rühren, Trauern, weinen will ich haben, diese werden recken. Who knows, right? You get to make it up. I think since it's a lament, it should be more free there, and I like my third rhythm.
That seemed more expressive,
Yeah.
yeah.
For me, it's easier. Yeah, here I feel restrained by these rhythms that I don't think fit the words. And that's, I think, the trick. If you're gonna do this music, make it fit the words. Some things should go da-da-da-da-da-da, because it works perfectly with those
Sure.
words. For this piece, I don't think it does. But, from the Minnesangers on to the Trouvères. What do we have for Trouvères? Let's find out. Oh, okay, ooh. Oh. Never mind. I skipped the Trouvères, it looks like. Oh, I did. I was going to give you Trouvères in a handout. But I didn't have a recording of this piece, and I decided to pick this piece. Sorry, there's no handout. This stinks. This is a fellow named Châtelain de Coucy, and he died in 1203 as a crusader, so chances are pretty good he wrote the song before 1200. Yeah. And this is one of those songs, gosh, I might know it, I don't know. I don't know this one in particular. It's La douce voix du rossignol sauvage. Do you know that?
I don't know it.
Oh,
I think
okay,
I've
yeah.
seen it, but.
Yeah, well, anyway, it's pretty typical for this type of words. We've got 5 verses, and it's the sweet voice of the forest nightingale that I hear brings sweetness and balm to my heart. I can't keep from rejoicing in song, I'm bound to sing. And then, of course, he goes on about the girl in the next verse, and oh no, I'm so abashed by her beauty that in her sight I am tongue-tied and mute. I dare not glance at her innocent face. Ah, so firmly have I set my heart on her that I could think of no one else. I know we said music, but poetry is the music, so. And again, you'll have to pick, this version has no rhythm because we don't know what it was. So you'd have to pick a rhythm that works with these words. So, okay, we don't have a recording of him, so too bad.
Can I sing it, Emily?
I don't know this song. I can make
Trouvier piece that you don't know.
Fine, you want to hear this one that I don't know? All right. La douce voix du rossignol sauvage qu'elle n'est un jour can't read it, it's just inside. Sorry. And then it repeats the tune, but new words. Me radoucis mon cœur Lors Italian que chant por espaudir Viento chanter puisqu'il vient approcher C'est le qui j'ai fait les hommages Si doit avoir branché mon courage, c'est le même à son éternel. Made me psycho. So I'm not sure that I did all the notes precisely right, but actually that's legit to change them. But there, that gives you an idea of what it sounds like. Sounds, actually, I think if you're not listening to the language, the lead singer and troubadour stuff all sounds the same. You will get more of that stuff in the 13th hundreds class. So I will, you get to hear more of that. So I don't have to do too much right now, actually, so we should move along, I'm spending too much time here. They didn't just write songs that were completely secular in nature. There are these kind of songs that we might think are sacred, but I'm not sure if they did or not, but they're not for church. For example, Marian devotional songs. There's a poem here that I thought was anonymous, but as I was going through my CDs, I found a version of it where they attributed it to Gauthier de Coincy, and he's 1177 to 1236, so it might be pre-1200. If he wrote it, which the other books say anonymous. Of course, one book said there's no music, and then I found the music in another book, so. Clearly it's confusing because there's different manuscripts extant, and they have poems, and sometimes they're attributed to someone, and sometimes they're not, and sometimes there's some music, and most of the time there isn't, so. And in fact, the recording I had wasn't this tune. It was, they said the tune was defective, or there wasn't enough there, so they had to make up some of it, and this tune's much nicer than the one on the recording. But this one I have written down, and presumably, I think they just didn't know about this manuscript is what happened.
And in fact, there could be two tunes in two manuscripts and they could have nothing to do with each other.
Yes, that is true, that happens as well. So this one's really lovely. It's rose which neither snow nor ice can destroy, nor fade its color. Little fountain of sweetness within the high salt sea. Light and darkness, joy and sadness, dew amid fire. I just love the poetic images that brings. It's all referencing Mary. Rose qui nois nische mi front namue color, dedent autem mersalee, fontanelle de douceur, claire ténébreux, joyeuse et triste, en flamme rosée. 5 verses of that. Really,
And this is
really
one of those
sweet.
songs that could apply to Mary or could be just.
Well,
presented as a
I
love
found
song.
them really great to rework for Queens.
Right,
They
exactly.
work really well because they're already praising a woman and they're saying they say she's Queen of Heaven, so you just change it to Queen of the Mid-Realm or whatever kingdom you happen to be from. And a lot of times if they say lady, a lot of queens have 2-syllable names, so that works really great, you know, just plug it in. So, all right, so we're going too slow. Troubadours. Let's see what we got here. This is Martin Best. He's the guy who's got me started on this. This is, believe it or not, another song to the sweet voice of that crazy nightingale, the wild nightingale. One was a troubadour, one's a troubadour. They're different poets, different poems, but they start off with almost the same words. That sweet voice of the wild or savage nightingale. Oh, this one's the sweet voice that I have heard of El Rossignolette Salvace, which sounds savage to me, but I guess it actually just translates as wild as opposed to domesticated. This one survives in 2 different manuscripts. He's doing one particular one. If you were watching the music, you could say, oh, he's doing this top one, not the bottom one. And the instrumentation, he made it up. Somebody had to add it because this is just an outline of the tune. I think it's like looking at jazz music. You have a line, and it needs to. If you just do the one line that's there and nothing else, I think you're doing it a disservice. You're just giving it an outline. And probably it should have more improvisation, just like jazz does too. Which is hard for us because we don't know what style of improvisation to do. The farther back you try to go, the harder it gets. We can do Renaissance improv fine because there's treatises and lots of examples. But the best you can do here is to have multiple versions of the tune existing and compare where they were singing and where they differ. And start going from there. But even then, I don't think that really gets the depth of probably what that was.
Why do we have this music at all?
Well,
Why was this written down?
People liked it. These were mostly written down in the 13th and 14th century, even though this is pre-1200. This is Bernard de Ventadorn, and he was in Eleanor of Aquitaine's court, so he's definitely...
These are elite musicians who are playing for court, and therefore their music was being written down as it was composed.
No, it was not written down when it was
Centuries later,
composed,
perhaps.
but it was written down later because somebody was feeling all, oh, we've got to preserve this, and so they wrote it down. The people who performed it probably didn't even read it, perhaps.
They play from memory.
Everything's from memory. The
But the
tunes from
music that
memory,
was
the
written
words
down
are
is
from
what we
memory.
have, what we know.
Well, also, if you're working from memory, you're much freer
Yeah.
to change things. This guy's most famous tune, based on the most versions we have of it, is it's more bird stuff. It's the lark instead of the
We're
nightingale.
performing the concert tonight, actually.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. That one, there's a dozen versions of it, extant. And what you can see is that certain things are identical on all of them. And that's the really strong part of it. And then when you get to the end of it, different versions are different. And it's an oral transmission. So you can make your own version by looking and playing mix and match if you want, which is
Oral
fun.
tradition, but written down because this music was more popular, or somebody could make money off of it?
Well, these were written
or-
down because they were composed by noblemen.
Okay.
Stuff that was composed by people who weren't noblemen didn't get written down. So all that lower class music, people who made their living as musicians, their stuff probably didn't get
So
written
when
down.
the
So we don't
nobles,
know
there'd
what
be
that is.
the people with the skills and the materials to write that.
Although you mentioned Kalenda Maya, which I believe is based on a folk song.
It is. The
So-
Kalenda Maya, one of my favorites, is based on the tune that the two jongleurs were playing on their viols. So all viol players know that one because you have to, it's like the first one. So,
So what
but-
we have is a fragment of the entire music culture, what most
Yeah.
people were playing most of the time,
We
singing
don't know.
and dancing to, we really don't know what's
nope, we really don't. We really don't. This is what we have available to us from the time period.
Right.
So no, we don't have all of it at all,
We didn't have 90% of it, probably.
or more.
I
Yeah,
would
I
say-
mean, and even of the poems that we have written down, especially with the Trouvères, we have more music written down, because that tradition's slightly later in time period. But the earlier stuff, we have lots of poems and few tunes. And then what about the instrumental music? There's almost nothing of that written down, there's very, very little. And so most of that was made up, and most of it didn't ever get written down. So how do you make up something that's in the right style? We don't have time for that.
Well, when we get into the 15th century and printing is introduced, then you start seeing quite a bit more music produced. Again, for economic purpose, you could sell it to,
This is another tune also done by Martin Best, another troubadour. This is by Geoffrey Rudel. This is not his more well-known one, this is No Such Sun Cloud. I'll mention the names of some other troubadours that are definitely pre-1200. Besides Bernard de Ventadorn and Geoffrey Rudel, there's Bertrand de Born. He did very few love songs. His were mostly political, trying to incite Eleanor and Henry's sons to go to war because he thought war was the best thing ever. So we have very little of his music, mostly poems. Marcabrou and Sercomon are two earlier troubadours. We have no music from Sercomon. We do have some music of Marcabrou. And, Galsum Fighty wrote a lament for the death of Richard the Lionhearted, which was in 1199, so
we know that.
I'm gonna say that one's a pre-1200 song. But we don't, I could spend all day on the Minnesingers, troubadours, and trouvères, and we never get to the other stuff. So, and of course, I should at least mention the first troubadour, whose stuff we have extant, which is Eleanor Bacquetaine's grandpa. And he wrote really racy stuff. His class is an adults only. Yeah, it's really racy, yeah.
Next year?
I have 2 horses, but I can't keep them both. Yeah, you're like, really? Yeah, and then in case you didn't get it at the end, he names them. It's embarrassing, why did you do that? Okay. So, yeah, he really does. Okay, crazy. Oh, and I wanted to mention that England has the same music. I'm not playing any of it, but since William the Conqueror went over and then they're speaking Norman, in addition to Anglo-Saxon, there's a fairly new book. I'm sure you've heard of the Musica Britannica series, but there's a new one from 2013. Songs in British sources 1150 to 1300. The first 18 are pre-1200. And in that first set, there's a couple songs in Latin, there's some songs in Anglo-Saxon, and songs in Norman French, which looks a little different from the Trouvère French. But anyway, and there's some stuff with more than one part also, not just solo lines, but some 2 and 3 part stuff. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. But I don't have any recordings of that stuff, because a lot of that hasn't been published before. Of course, it has the, Sumer's Akumen, but that's a little bit later. You might get it in the next class, I don't know, probably.
You will.
Yeah, see, because it's classic. But when I found that book, I thought, oh, that's really exciting, new stuff from the time period I didn't know about. So, wanted
That
to
whole
mention.
series is amazing.
So we need to get to the sacred music now, so let's move on. All right. There's a couple of fairly famous schools of polyphony, but everything's based on a chant. Oh, this is a chant that's supposed to be by Periton, Beata de Shera. So right around 1200. Where'd my music go? Oh, it is over there. And I've always loved this chant. I think it's really pretty. It has more range than most chants. This particular one, most of them are narrow range. Probably why I like it. But next, sorry, we're in a hurry here. This is Viderunt Omnes. I got a copy here from Libus Wales. This is in chant notation, so I just want you to listen to the beginning of it. In fact, we might go back, since I was yapping on top of it, let's go back to the very beginning, listen to the first couple of notes. Good enough.
It starts in a triad.
Right.
And with that much reverb in the room, you get the arpeggiation turning into a
This
chord even
is
with the singer.
Leonin.
Sorry.
This is the bottom line is the original line that we just heard, that we listened to. He's sitting on the first syllable. The tune is really slowed down at this point, so the other guy can go on top. They're still on the first syllable. Let's see how long this lasts. Still on the first syllable. Day. Same note, sorry, same note. Day. At least we're on the second syllable.
Well, they were so afraid of making changes to the chant that they eventually figured out if they slowed the chant down, but it was still there, they could ornament above it.
All right, third syllable, we finished the first word. Phew. Although it has a second note, it goes root, so we'll see if it goes on.
That was
Still
the
on
purpose
Viderunt.
of those extremely long notes that they wanted to improvise.
There's the other note, yay!
Or syllables rather.
But we have to get to the next word, which is omnes. Have we gotten that? Nope.
And the extremely long notes are the chant very slowed down.
And then during the Reformation, there was actually a reaction against this kind of music. The rules passed against when you sing a song, you have to have one note per word.
Is that, I guess that's O, huh? It's pretty for an O. On the second word now, first syllable. This was originally improvised. I don't know how far back this style goes where they were just making this up. But at Notre Dame Cathedral when they were building it, and this was still while it was under construction, that this music was being written and performed in Notre Dame Cathedral. So this is the first guy, Leonin, who wrote stuff like this, and it's pretty cool, but it's really slow. Yes, we finished the word. Okay, phew. First two words. Go back to the regular chant here, because otherwise it'll take forever to get through the piece, right? So, but then he's going to do a few more words, and then they're going to go back to this stretching it out again with the other guy decorating on top. If they were improvising like this, what I wonder is, was there a set when I get to this point you're going to change that note, or was it just if you sing together all the time you get used to it, you can see him getting ready to take a breath and change pitch, and so you change what you're doing on top? I mean, who's leading it? I'm not sure. Because one of the two parts needs to lead, I think, and the other needs to change with that. Or were they less upset about notes that clashed than we were? And so if they like, when they changed and they didn't care, maybe it's okay. They went back to the, this is going a little faster speed, changing the syllable underneath. Or was it just that one?
Well, maybe
No,
it
it
was,
is going faster now. So you have different speeds that you can do that. You can do the really, really slow, or you can go a little bit faster.
maybe it's kind of like, jazz improvisation, whereas if in this case, the top part is improvising, the other part is
He's got the bass.
just
Yeah.
reacting to what he
And
does.
if the one is in the groove, the other one will stay with it.
Right.
The one is, and then, the other one
They
is
run out of
like, okay,
ideas, so we
we're
gotta
kinda
switch
bored,
notes.
So let's switch.
I think
Yeah.
so.
So they're kind of-
I think so very much. It's more. We have switched to Periton instead of Leonin. This is 4 parts now. It's the same chant. I just figured that was enough for the one guy. But so this is a little later in time period now. We're doing the same thing but with 4 parts. It gets even thicker.
Chant was introduced in the 7th century?
Chant goes all the way back to pre-Christianity. Some of the chants that we have, I think, may coincide with the Jewish stuff. Because when Christianity started, it was just a version of Judaism. Stuff I think that's based on New Testament text is probably new music, right? Unless they borrowed something, which they might have. Don't know. I'm not going to say any songs written to Old Testament texts and therefore Jewish, they're probably not, but some of it probably goes back. I think they got to the second song of the day. I think that was all B because I heard the day. Wow. The thing about performing this stuff, if you're one of those and you're trying to do what the stuff says on the page, and people write specific rhythms down for this, and I'm not sure that they should. I think it needs to be more improvised. But it's really hard. And if you're on that long note, it's also kind of boring. So it's both challenging and boring at the same time, which means we don't do this very often. To us, this is so foreign to our ears and what we're accustomed to hearing that it's really hard for us to do this. You don't think it's boring? It's gorgeous.
I love it. I don't think
It's
boring at
gorgeous.
all. I would love.
But it's really hard to perform well.
Well, and I'm sitting here listening to this music, and all I can think of is how few venues we have in the SCA to do that right. Because if you don't have the sound,
This is
of the
actually
room-
harder to do than some later music because it's less clear
Space.
what
right,
you should
where
be
you have
doing.
the Gothic spaces.
And you do,
nowhere.
the right acoustics make a big difference too. This was written for the, oh my gosh, we've got this
We
new
couldn't-
space, how can we fill this
You
space?
couldn't perform this in this room, for example. Right. You can't. It wouldn't sound right.
No, it would be a little dead.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Let's go to a slightly earlier, but still polyphonic and this is the Aquitanian school, so St. Marshall is this is 12th century also. It's a little earlier than the Notre Dame school. I have 2 different guys, they published a year apart. The one guy put rhythms in. He's like, I must put rhythms because people cannot perform music without rhythms.
Putting in bar lines.
But he's making the rhythm up because he's not sure. The other guy is like, I'm not writing the rhythms down, so he just drew little lines. And even the way this guy lined notes up versus the way this guy lined them up don't match. It's very annoying. If you're trying to do this music, you have to go back, look at them and say, which one am I going to do? This particular piece actually survives in 2 different manuscripts, so you can see the little differences. And again, I think this was first improvised, and then somebody's like, ooh, that version today was really good, and somebody who knows how writes it down is what I think. But I like this stuff actually better than the Notre Dame.
They haven't slowed the chant tune down as much as
In this particular version, some
Yeah.
versions do. I
Okay.
like this one because it's not, it's approachable, more approachable. And yeah, you can see it's pretty much like there's one note per syllable on the chant here, and then this one, he just has clusters of notes, but he doesn't get too many, you know? It's sometimes there's one, sometimes just a pair. He's got like up to 5 or 6 mostly per the chant underneath. So I think this is really cool repertoire. Fewer people know about the Aquitanian stuff than the Notre Dame school. Very similar, but there are some differences. I like that stuff.
Similar style of church music across Europe at the time.
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Okay.
in terms of the length, they didn't think of time as we did, presumably. It didn't matter to them how
Nope.
long it took to sing a piece.
Nope. Right, yeah, I mean, especially if you're singing to
schedule.
God,
Right.
then take whatever time you need.
And this would have been monks singing to
This is God's
themselves.
time, not human time.
Right.
Yeah, that's another good point. And were secular people doing harmonics like this, or was this just in the church? I don't know. I mean, we don't know what people were making up on the street, because the only stuff that got written down at this point was people who knew how to write, which is mostly the
People
monks and
clerics.
stuff. Right, clerics, so.
I've also been told that these magnificent cathedrals across Europe, they were empty most of the time. There wasn't a lot of, going to church is a Protestant idea. There wasn't a lot of attendance at mass and events.
Oh, okay.
So the priests or the monks were singing to themselves, and they were fine with them.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, I think this is Hildegard. Yay, okay, Hildegard. I wanted to mention Hildegard's chant in particular as opposed to the other, because hers really stands out, I think, from the other styles. This is O Splendidissima Gemma. Hildegard is 1098 to 1179. And I feel like her music has a bigger range than the Gregorian chant that was before her. And I like to attribute it to because she was a woman, but I don't know.
Just about the only female name we know.
Well, it is, but one of the things that she does. Get to the singing, for heaven's sakes. One of the things that she does that I mean, when you hear it, you're like, that must be a Hildegard chant, is she'll go up a fifth, and usually when they go up a fifth, they turn right back down and come down, because like the fifth is as big as you can go, and she'll go up a fifth, and then you go up and finish the octave off, and if you've been listening to other chant before that, and then you hear hers, you get blown away, you're like, oh, octave. People just didn't do that then. So I don't know why not. It sounds great, but.
Did Hildegard write mostly for women, for nuns, to sing?
Yeah, she was writing for women, and maybe women's voices are naturally have more, I don't know if women's voices actually have a bigger range than men's, but maybe it's trained versus untrained.
Well, she would also only be, like, if the monks would probably be writing for grown men and boys, which might make a difference.
Oh.
Right.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
This far back, though, I don't know if they were composing with the treble boy sound yet.
Oh, I don't
In
know.
their head that far back, I'm not sure.
I mean, it is kind of a microcosm of the development of Western music throughout what we think of as the classical period. Rules are established and then meaning is generated in later styles of writing by breaking the pre-established rules. So she's doing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the Hildy part. You hear that, it's a Hildegard chant. Nobody else is doing that. I'm telling you. Okay, that's so cool.
Would men have sung her music, or would they have viewed it as unacceptable for male voices?
Well, she was writing for her own vocation.
Right.
This is just your regular chant versus her stuff.
So we assume that Hildegard's stuff did not broadcast far during her lifetime. It stayed in her convent.
She had a lot of influence, actually.
So this is just plain old chant. In fact, this is from that hit recording named Chant. Remember that one?
Yes.
The like floating monks in
Yeah.
the sky? Yeah, so it's
It's
just.
actually good seeking.
It is. This is just a plain old chant. It's actually, yeah, it doesn't matter what it is, it's chant. Right? It doesn't do that thing that Hildegard stuff does, right? It really just doesn't. And this is mostly what we have. It's much more like this. So that other stuff we were listening to really sounds more interesting compared to this. Although people thought this stuff was awesome. I think maybe you can understand the words, and if you get into the mindset that's there means more. But we're running out of time, so let's keep going. What else did I toss in? This is an example from the 9th century, Scolia and Chiriades, one of those manuals. This is just, you know, parallel octaves or fifths or fourths or whatever. They just said, let's record this.
But it's not drawn out. That was something that was introduced later?
Well, I don't know. Oh, right, yeah, this is just the how to harmonize in that 9th century treatise. This is how you do it.
Well, because
So they-
following your thought backwards, you know, the farther back we go, this is.
The less we know about what they're doing.
Yeah, but keeping those intervals the same is safer than what they did later when they started moving them. So keeping fourths all the time.
Well, the first stuff that we have where they notated, they're moving in opposite directions. They're like getting closer and farther apart from one another. Because why would you even bother writing this down? Just write down the one tune if you're going to write anything. You don't need to write, you can write directions on how to do this, but you don't need to take up space writing the music like this, right?
Yeah.
Why?
And in fact, if you think about it, you've got lines and spaces. You start the note here, you start the note here. It's the same.
Of course, back in the 9th century, we get before we had our lines, because poor Guido hadn't made our lines for us yet. So then you just got squiggles. They really look like squiggles. They're just squiggles. And Hucbald says, back in 900, he says, well, take the signs that custom has handed down to us. You can start to see the first note. You can start anywhere that's comfortable in your range, and you can see the next note is higher or lower, but you don't know how much higher or lower unless you get the tune by ear from someone. You have to learn it from someone else. It's more of a reminder thing. It's no good to learn it from. It's great. And there were supposedly also things in the notation that got lost when they put it on the staff lines and made the pitches precise, inflection and, I don't know, maybe dynamics or other things that they're doing. Maybe some vibrato here or trill kind of stuff. I'm using modern terms, but they did stuff that when you figure it out sort of equals that. But yeah, they had other stuff in there and we don't know. So that's enough. What are we moving on to? Oh, I thought we shouldn't forget about other styles of the chant. Byzantine chant.
Muslim chant later.
This is a Lebanese Sister Maria something, I can't pronounce her whole name. But she's like a big star in that world because she is freaking amazing. Because the kind of ornamentation she does might be the kind that we were doing too, but it's died out on our side and it's been preserved over there. And there she just said the word Alleluia.
This is closer to Jewish liturgical chant. It hasn't gone as far away as you just said, as the Western chant.
Do we have more literature available for Byzantine music than for Western European?
I don't know what we have. It's not something I've researched. I just have a couple CDs with Sister Maria on here, and she's just freaking amazing. But we also, there's a book by Timothy McGee called The Sound of Medieval Song. It's like reading a doctoral thesis. It's really hard to read. But he's like gone through and read all the really early treatises, 13th century, 9th century, 12th century. And he's read the treatises about when they say how you're supposed to sing. And improvisation, adding ornamentation was a basic fundamental part of the musical style. And if you didn't do that, you weren't singing it right. And the closest we can get now is to listen to this Byzantine stuff. But it's so foreign to our Western ears that it's hard to do. You really need to immerse yourself in that before you can try it. But reading his book, I really came out away from it feeling like I should sound like this. Let's see what one of our other songs is. She's cool. music here for 2 hours and only had 1 hour class, and it turns out CD2 didn't get burned correctly. So I will talk about some of the stuff that we aren't going to have time to listen to. But getting back to secular music as opposed to sacred music, we know people were telling stories, long epic poems in music, but we don't know what it was. Ben Bagby of Sequentia has researched a lot on the Germanic stuff. In fact, if you have nothing to do May 1st and you come to the Chicago area, he's doing Beowulf. Yeah, and he's been doing that one for 20 years because I saw him before I was married doing Beowulf, but we were walking. It was a dark storytelling guy. But he's really cool. He gets there and he has a lyre. He has recreated the music. He's done a lot of research, but we don't actually have the music. We have instruments. They only have 6 strings, so there's only so many notes you can have. Based on that and the poetry and stuff, yes, he's made it up, which sounds pretty damn good. And so he's got a CD on Ada, and he's done like one called The Rhinegold Curse. I don't know if he's recorded Beowulf, but he does perform it.
There's YouTube recordings of parts of Beowulf, and I know that at times when he's doing that, he'll break into song. Like he's performing it,
Sometimes he's
and then he
speaking,
starts
and
to
then
sing,
sometimes
and I
he's-
have no idea where any of it comes from.
He's making it up. I mean, the
But he's
poetry
got-
he's not making
But
up.
he's informed, right? I mean, he's
Yes,
got some
it's
level
historically informed. He's done a lot of research, but when it comes down to it, he is making it up. But it sounds really cool, and it's very plausible. I think the theories that are behind his invention are pretty good. On one of his CDs, I was going to play some, not just that, but yeah, there was a fiddle girl, and so we know they had fiddles. But what was the style? Well, she went to Norway and she listened to a bunch of Hardanger fiddle players. And then she made up stuff that worked for a medieval fiddle that sounded very much like the Hardanger stuff. But again, she was inventing it based on tradition. And some of that stuff, some of what they're doing now probably does date back, but not all of it. We don't know which parts, but you do some research, you do some plausible recreations. It's recreations, that's what we do here, right? There's also some Celtic stuff. There's a group called Ultramar, and they have done what we call a crossroad of the Celts, where they have researched and they've got some 11th century Celtic stuff. They've got a poem from 11th century, and maybe they actually had some 15th century music on one of them. On another one, they kind of sort of made it up based on this other stuff. So yes, they're inventing it because we don't really have very much the farther back you go. The same group has also done, and I'm sorry the CD didn't burn, but they've also done 2 CDs called Iberian Garden. Because in Spain, we had 3 big cultures all living together. And we had the Christians, and we had the Jews, and we had the Muslims, the Arabic, and all 3 of those had their own musical traditions. And they're all side by side there. There is music today in North Africa that they say is Andalusian music. They swear up and down. This is Andalusian music. And we have some poems. This one isn't one of those poems, but this is Morocco. But Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, like Libya, all have a tradition of music. And this music is our Andalusian music. Now, they never wrote the music down, so it's just a living tradition. So we don't know how much it has changed in 1,000 years, or 500 or whatever. But this is a little bit of the Andalusian music from Morocco. Ultramar there are about 10 tunes that can be documented of poetry back to Al-Andalus, and how much of the tunes that are being used for that today still works. I mean, sometimes the poetry has changed also, you know, they're only doing this one verse left and it's been truncated or something, so surely the music has changed in time too, but some of it might still actually be. It's a pretty strong oral tradition. And so in Iberian Garden, they have made recordings of a couple of these poems that date back to Andalusian Muslim poets. Yeah, oh, here's the one in particular. Yeah, there's Ibn Zuhir. He was 1113 to 1198. And when he was asked which of his muwashash was the most excellent, it was this one. And people are still performing it today. And so the early music group, listening to stuff like this, and we actually have the sheet music and the words for that, so they actually perform it. That one of the things that's annoying about this stuff, though, is it goes on forever. When I asked my husband to burn the CD, he's like, you had this one track there was only one track on the whole CD, it's like 48 minutes long. I was like, oh, no, I didn't know that. Okay, never mind, we won't do that, so that's this one here. But yeah, I mean, there's descriptions where like she sang one verse for 2 hours before she went on to the next one, because you're supposed to add these extra notes. And my housekeeper knows a little bit of Arabic. She's Indonesian, so I showed her this. I was like, does this look like Arabic to you? She's like, no, I can't read that. I was like, yeah, because it's going ya na 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 la 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 ya na ya in between the middles of, so you don't finish the word. They just stretch stuff out. And it's like they sing a couple of words, and then na na na, and then back to a couple of words, and then na 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 ya na na la, and then you get back to the words. And to us, we don't understand Arabic anyway, so it all sounds like ya na na na. So, oops. Yeah, but yeah, there actually are some words in there, but they add so many of that that stretched out, and there is a form to it, but the form is not a form we're accustomed to. It's not a sonnet, it's not 16 and stuff. So I don't know what it is, but let's see. I'm running out of time. We don't have time. All right. Well, I wanted to mention ragas too, because again, it's an unwritten but an oral tradition that stretches back unbroken, the Guru, the student, going way back. And we have like the 13th century treatise that actually, when you study it, the whole thing of when somebody does a raga, they do this slow improv part before the drum comes in and then it picks up and it has a tempo. That format dates back to the 13th century at least, because there's a Sanskrit 13th century treatise saying that essentially. So that's pretty cool. And in fact, some of this Andalusian stuff does the same thing. There's a little bit about some traveler, he was staying and he was feeling sick, and then he heard the instruments, and he wondered what kind of voice the singer would have. It's clearly telling you there's an instrumental prelude before the singing starts. Anyway, this is going to go on forever. Do you want to hear some Egyptian and Sumerian, or do I have to end here and let the next person take over for the 13th century?
Egyptian.
All right.
You're making things up.
Oh, yeah, speaking of making things up, that's right. I've got these tracks here. Some woman claims she's deciphered the notation in the ancient Hebrew Bible. And, all those psalms, they're supposed to have music. She claims she's figured out. On the other hand, she is a composer, too. So, I don't know how legitimate that is. Hey, that's nice, though. Yeah. Whoa, we're going to start. Oh, we're going to start with some ancient Greek. Let's see what that sounds like.
There's somebody who says he's put together some of the ancient Greeks.
Yeah, supposedly. Yeah, This is supposed to be 3rd and 4th century AD. Do you believe that? I don't know. They're just little fragments of music that they claim they
Suspiciously
found.
familiar.
This one sounds kind of medieval to me.
Yeah.
With that drone in there. Yeah. Next. Those sound like crumhorns to me. But I don't know. Maybe they're songs or something. I don't know. This one's supposedly a trochaic fragment, yeah. Well, but you can recreate the instruments based on stuff, right? The artwork, but I don't know about what they sound like. And I don't know how much I believe all this stuff. This one's supposed to be a lament. Okay, well, those were the Greeks. Let's keep going. What do we got now? Oh, this is supposedly the biblical thing. This is Psalm 23. But yeah, she claims that there's little diacritical marks in the original text that nobody understands anymore, but she has figured out that it's Muslim tradition. based on her sensitivities as a composer, has worked out something that sounds good based on those diacritical marks. She's written a whole book about it. I haven't read it. I just have this CD.
Does it come with a tinfoil hat?
I don't know.
Well, it's fun, but
Yeah, so this is Psalm 23. It sounds nice,
Love
it
it.
sounds Jewish. It's pretty. I don't actually know. I haven't read her writing, so I don't really know how.
There's only so right we're gonna get, you know, at some point.
Yeah.
I've read too that we know almost nothing about what Roman music sounded like. There's no record.
You're right, I don't have any. I have the Greek, but I don't have any Roman. Did I forget to mention that there's stuff like this? This is music from the Tang court. This is volume 4 of 5. They've actually got the music. Isn't that great? One of my favorite, this is music from the Tang court that survived in Japan.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Japanese wrote it down. It's been transcribed into our notation as opposed to the original notation, which would have looked more like.
Emily,
Whatever.
you're tapped.
I'm out of time, aren't I? Yep. Okay,
You can
that's
play
my
the,
last.
you can, why don't you play the music while I get my stuff set?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's a trumpet. This is supposed to be ancient Egypt, so. Yeah, so there's, the Japanese wrote stuff down. And so they've got tunes surviving from China that China doesn't have anymore, which is interesting. All right, that's enough of that trumpet. Next. This is one of those cistern shaking things.
Thank you, Amelie.
Okay. Hey, Sumerian. There we go. Just kidding. We can go to Sumerian. I have no idea how accurate this
Maybe.
is. Yeah, who knows? They say it is. That's cool. Well, thanks. If you can,
That's
I also interested. Make stuff up.
Right.
I don't know anybody
Somewhat
who
important.
doesn't play it, somebody who doesn't periodically just start making,
Yeah, okay.
Do you use that work? No, I brought my iPod thing, but this is fancier yet.
More sophisticated than me. I'm Miss Old